Lyra had always been different, though she never admitted it to anyone. On the planet Thalora, everything had its order. The cities shimmered with silver towers that seemed to touch the sky. Every alien moved in precise patterns, spoke in carefully measured tones, and expressed only what was necessary. Emotions were private, hidden even from close friends. Lyra followed the rules perfectly, or at least she tried. But deep inside, she felt a small, constant curiosity, a tiny spark that made her question the world beyond her own. It was a quiet evening in the city of Lumora. The streets glowed with soft lights that reflected from the crystalline buildings, and the wind carried the faint hum of energy flowing through the city systems. Lyra walked along the observation balcony of the central tower, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. Even here, she felt restrained, as if her own thoughts were being measured against invisible rules. That night, the sky seemed to change. A streak of light flashed across the horizon, brighter and different from the usual comets. Lyra's heart beat a little faster. The light did not vanish, it landed. From her high vantage point, she could see movement, a small group of beings stepping carefully out of their strange silver craft. They walked differently, with confidence but also uncertainty. Their shapes were unusual. Their skin had a different color than anything Lyra had seen, and their eyes seemed alive in a way she could not describe. She had seen other travelers before, other species from distant worlds, but these humans were different. Something about them felt raw, real, and uncontrolled. Lyra's curiosity rose like a wave she could not hold back. She watched silently as they set up small devices near a glowing lake, touching the water, whispering to each other, laughing softly when something surprised them. Lyra's attention settled on one human, a man with kind eyes and a calm smile. He moved with care, watching the world as if he wanted to understand everything. Lyra felt something she could not name. It was not fear, though she felt cautious. It was fascination. The next day, Lyra could not focus on her usual duties. She wandered the streets, her mind replaying the images of the humans. She noticed small details she had never considered before. The way the human smiled when he discovered something new, how he spoke to others with warmth, how he seemed connected to the moment rather than planning every detail. In Lyra's world, planning and precision were everything. Yet here was a being free from all of it, enjoying life in a way that was unimaginable. Her friends noticed her distraction. "Lyra," said Kale, her closest companion, "you seem different today. Are you unwell?" "I am fine," she replied quickly, her voice too measured. But even as she spoke, she knew she was not fine. She wanted to see the humans again. She wanted to understand them. By the third day, the humans had moved further into the glowing forests near the city. Lyra followed quietly, hiding behind trees and rocks, careful not to be seen. She watched them examine strange plants and floating crystals, talking to each other in their soft, musical voices. Every gesture fascinated her, and then it happened. The human she had noticed first turned toward her hiding spot. Their eyes met. Lyra froze. The human, Ethan, did not look alarmed. Instead, he smiled just a little as if he somehow knew she was there. Lyra's heart raced. She had never experienced anything like this. A glance, one single glance, had made her feel more alive than she had in years. That night, Lyra could not sleep. Her thoughts were full of images of humans, their laughter, their curiosity, and the strange, warm feeling their presence had given her. She began to question everything about her own life. Why did she always follow the rules? Why did her people hide their feelings? Why did she feel so drawn to beings who expressed themselves so freely? Lyra decided she needed to see them again. She waited until the city's quietest hour and slipped away from her home, moving carefully toward the humans' camp in the forest. The forest was alive with colors she had never noticed before. The trees glowed faintly, the crystal lakes shimmered, and the air smelled sweet and fresh. When she arrived, she watched the humans from behind a rock. Ethan was teaching one of his companions how to study a plant's growth pattern. He laughed when the other made a mistake, and the sound was so warm and open that Lyra felt her chest tighten. She wanted to speak, but fear held her back. She was an alien, a member of a society that would never understand this fascination. Still, she could not leave. She stayed hidden, observing their actions, listening to their conversations, and learning from their interactions. Every human gesture, every laugh, every curious question sparked something inside her. It was as if a new world had opened, a world full of emotion, freedom, and life. Days passed. Lyra found herself drawn closer each night, unable to resist the pull of the humans. She began to imitate some of their behaviors when alone, smiling at the moon, speaking aloud softly, touching the leaves of the glowing plants. She felt happy, a strange, new happiness that was unknown to her kind. Then came the moment that changed everything. While watching Ethan carefully study a crystal formation, Lyra accidentally stepped on a branch. The snap echoed through the forest. She froze, expecting alarm, perhaps even hostility, but Ethan did not run. He turned slowly and looked straight at her. "You're there," he said gently, a small smile on his face. "You don't have to hide." Lyra's mind raced. How did he know? Did he sense her? But there was no fear in his eyes, only warmth and curiosity. She hesitated, then slowly stepped out from her hiding place. Her silvery skin shimmered in the moonlight, and her multifaceted eyes reflected Ethan's kind gaze. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Hello," he replied. "I've been hoping to meet you." Lyra felt a shiver run through her. One glance, one simple, kind glance had broken something inside her. Her world, her strict life of rules and order, suddenly felt small. For the first time, she felt that she could explore, feel, and choose. Over the next few days, Lyra continued to meet Ethan secretly. They shared small experiences, watching the sunrise together, collecting strange, glowing plants, and talking in soft voices. Lyra learned about humans, their curiosity, their emotions, and their ways of seeing the world. Every moment made her feel alive, more alive than she had ever felt. But with this new joy came fear. What if her society discovered her? What if her actions were seen as unacceptable? Every night Lyra lay awake, torn between the thrill of discovery and the weight of her people's expectations. Yet she could not stop. Humans had shown her a life she had never imagined. One glance had changed everything, and now she could not go back to the way things were. By the end of the first week, Lyra realized that she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer the same alien girl who followed every rule without question. Something deep inside her had awakened. Curiosity, wonder, and a new sense of freedom had taken root. And it all began with one glance at a human. The forest seemed brighter now, the stars sharper, and the air filled with possibilities. Lyra knew that the world beyond her city, beyond her people's strict rules, was waiting. She was ready to explore it, ready to embrace the feelings and choices she had never allowed herself before. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly alive, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Lyra's life had changed completely since she first saw the humans. The pull of curiosity and wonder that Ethan and his team inspired was stronger every day. The rules of her world felt distant, almost unimportant, compared to the new feelings that had awakened inside her. Every night she returned to the forest to watch the humans explore, laugh, and learn. She was careful at first, hiding behind trees, studying their gestures and words. But as days passed, she grew bolder. One evening she stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out toward a glowing flower that Ethan was holding. "You can touch it," Ethan said softly, noticing her hesitation. "It won't hurt you." Lyra's heart beat fast. She hesitated, then touched the flower's surface. It was cold and smooth, but warm in a way she had never experienced. The human smiled at her again, and for the first time, Lyra felt a connection that went beyond words. Over the next week, Lyra began to interact more openly. She asked questions about the humans' work, their lives, and even about emotions, though she struggled to understand her own. Ethan explained patiently. "We feel strongly because it helps us connect with each other," he said. "We notice the world with our hearts as well as our minds." Lyra had never considered such a thing. Her people valued logic above all, seeing emotions as distractions. But she began to notice that the humans' emotions made their actions richer, more meaningful. Every laugh, every touch, every glance carried energy, warmth, and understanding. One day she finally asked, "Why do you care so much about small things? Why do you laugh at mistakes?" Ethan looked thoughtful. "Because life is short, and because joy makes everything better. We learn more when we are happy and curious." Lyra thought about her life. She had always followed rules, avoiding mistakes and expressing only what was necessary. But now she realized how small and limited her existence had been. She wanted more. The humans were not only teaching her about emotions, they were teaching her about courage. She noticed how they approached new situations with calm confidence, even when things were risky. They laughed when experiments failed and celebrated every small discovery. Lyra had never seen her people act like that. In her world, failure was a warning, a sign of weakness, but humans embraced failure as part of learning. Lyra began to imitate them. She started experimenting with small things on her own, testing ideas without fear. She laughed quietly when a crystal she tried to levitate fell to the ground. The sound surprised her. It felt natural and freeing. But change was not without danger. Her friends noticed the shift in her behavior. Kale, her closest companion, confronted her one evening as they walked along the city's glowing streets. "Lyra, something is wrong," he said, his voice cautious. "You are different. People are talking. You are breaking the rules. Why?" Lyra felt her chest tighten. She wanted to explain, but the words were difficult. Finally, she said, I want to understand more. I want to see the world differently. Can't we learn new things without fear?" Kale shook his head. "Our way is safe. Our rules protect us. If you continue like this, you risk everything. Your family, your friends, your future." Lyra felt a mixture of fear and determination. Fear of losing everything she had known, but determination to embrace the new life she had glimpsed through Ethan's eyes. She realized that staying the same was no longer possible. She had been changed by something beyond her control, a spark of curiosity, a glimpse of human life. The next night, Lyra joined the humans openly for the first time. Ethan greeted her with a smile, and the other humans waved. They did not seem afraid. They welcomed her, asking her to help examine a glowing plant. She hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward. As they worked together, Lyra felt exhilaration. She touched the plant, examined its patterns, and even suggested a new experiment. The humans listened carefully, nodding with interest. For the first time, Lyra felt her mind and heart working together. She was learning, creating, and feeling all at once. Over the next few weeks, her transformation became more visible. She laughed freely, expressed excitement, and even felt frustration when experiments failed. These emotions were strange, new, and sometimes overwhelming, but they also made her feel alive. Yet the change brought conflict. Some members of her society noticed her unusual behavior. Older mentors and leaders began to question her choices. They warned her that continued exposure to humans could destabilize her mind and influence others negatively. Lyra struggled with fear. She knew that if she were discovered, she could face punishment or exile. But she could not deny the happiness and insight that humans had brought into her life. Every glance, every conversation, every shared discovery reminded her that life could be bigger than rules and order. One afternoon, Ethan took her to a clearing filled with floating crystals. "I want to show you something," he said. He guided her hands to a cluster of crystals and asked her to touch them in sequence. When she did, the crystals began to glow in a beautiful pattern, reflecting colors across the forest. Lyra gasped. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Ethan smiled. "You made it happen. You're learning to see the world differently, not just with your eyes, but with your heart." Lyra felt tears in her eyes. She had never cried before. She did not even know that her kind could cry. But now she understood the meaning of joy, awe, and wonder. She had felt a connection to something larger than herself, something that went beyond rules and logic. That night, as she returned to her city, she felt different. She walked taller, her steps lighter. She noticed the glow of the city in a new way, appreciating colors, shapes, and sounds she had ignored before. For the first time, she felt truly alive in her own world. However, change always brings challenges. One morning, she found that Kale had followed her secretly. He confronted her near the edge of the forest, his eyes filled with worry. "Lyra, you are changing too fast," he said. "Your people will notice, they will judge you, they will punish you. Why are you risking everything?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting determination. "I am risking nothing," she said quietly. "I am learning to live, I am learning to feel. Can't you see? This is who I am becoming." Kale shook his head, frustrated but unable to argue further. "I don't understand," he said. "I don't want to lose you." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "You won't lose me, I am still me, but I am more. I can see, feel, and learn things I never could before, and I cannot go back." The human team noticed the growing tension. Ethan took Lyra aside one evening. "Change is never easy," he said. "But remember, being brave means standing for what you believe, even if it is scary." Lyra nodded. "I know, I do not want to hurt anyone." Ethan smiled gently. "You are not hurting anyone. You are inspiring others. Even your friend Kale, he will learn eventually. He just needs time." Days passed, and Lyra began to notice subtle changes in her own society. Other young aliens started to watch her secretly, curious about her new behavior. Some attempted small acts of freedom, laughing quietly, questioning rules, experimenting with their own ideas. Lyra realized that her transformation was influencing others, and the thought filled her with both pride and responsibility. Lyra's own emotions grew more complex. She felt joy, excitement, fear, and anticipation all at once. Each interaction with humans brought new lessons. She began to understand the human way of learning, not just through observation, but through connection, experimentation, and emotional awareness. One evening, Ethan asked her to help him explore a hidden canyon filled with glowing minerals. Lyra felt her heart leap at the invitation. She had never ventured this far before. As they walked together, she shared stories of her own people, their traditions, and their lives. Ethan listened intently, asking questions that made her think deeply about her world and herself. At the canyon's edge, they discovered a rare crystal formation. Ethan smiled and handed her a crystal shard. "Take it," he said, "a reminder that new experiences make life richer." Lyra held it carefully, feeling its warmth and energy. She looked at Ethan and realized how much he had changed in just a few weeks. One glance, one encounter, had led to a transformation she could never have imagined. By the end of the part, Lyra understood something important. Humans had shown her the power of emotion, curiosity, and courage. She knew that life would never be the same, not for her, and not for those who would follow her example. Lyra returned home that night, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She had begun a journey that would challenge everything she had ever known. The world felt larger, brighter, and more alive. She was no longer just an obedient alien girl. She was a being capable of wonder, joy, and change. And the humans had taught her everything she needed to know about what it meant to truly live. Lyra stood at the edge of the city, looking out over the glowing skyline. The wind carried a gentle hum through the crystal towers, but it felt different now. She noticed the colors, the sounds, the life around her in a way she had never before. Everything seemed sharper, fuller, more alive. She smiled softly. Nothing would ever be the same. The humans had stayed for several weeks, teaching, exploring, and sharing their curiosity. Through them, Lyra had learned more than she could have imagined. She had discovered emotions, courage, creativity, and joy. She had laughed, cried, wondered, and questioned. And through it all, she had begun to see herself in a new light, an alien girl with a mind guided by reason, yet a heart awakened by feeling. But the change did not go unnoticed. Her friends and elders had been watching. Kale, though still wary, had begun to understand that Lyra was not lost. Some young aliens, inspired by her example, had started to experiment with laughter, curiosity, and questions. Others, however, saw her transformation as a threat. The city council, strict and protective of their traditions, grew concerned. They summoned Lyra to the ceremonial platform, a high structure where major announcements and decisions were made. Lyra's heart beat fast as she climbed the platform steps. She had never felt this combination of fear and excitement before. Around her, the council members stared silently, their expressions controlled but their eyes filled with judgment. The young aliens who had been secretly watching her now whispered among themselves, curious and anxious. "You stand before us," began the council leader, a tall alien with shimmering silver skin and deep, unblinking eyes, "having deviated from our ways. You have broken the rules of emotional restraint and introduced unpredictable behavior into our society. How do you defend yourself?" Lyra took a deep breath. She felt the fear rising, but it was different from before. She did not want to hide. She wanted to speak the truth. "I am not broken," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I am alive. I have learned to see the world not only with my mind, but with my heart. I have learned to feel, to wonder, to connect. This does not make me weak. It makes me stronger." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some gasped, others whispered to each other. The council leader's expression remained stern, but Lyra could see a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "You speak of humans," he said slowly, "beings we do not understand, whose ways are unpredictable. Are you saying they have changed you?" "Yes," Lyra replied. "They have shown me that life is bigger than rules, that joy, curiosity, and courage are gifts we should embrace, not fear. I have learned that emotions do not weaken us, they make us better, they make us whole." For a moment, silence fell over the platform. Lyra could feel the weight of history and tradition pressing against her, yet she stood firm. Then, from the crowd of young aliens, a small voice spoke. Can we try too?" it asked timidly. Lyra turned and smiled. Yes, she said gently, we can all learn together. The council leader paused, looking at her and then at the crowd. Perhaps there is value in seeing life differently, he said slowly. Perhaps we have been too strict. Perhaps it is time to learn from what you have discovered. Lyra's heart lifted. Change was not easy, and acceptance would take time, but the first step had been taken. She realized that her courage and openness had inspired others to question, to explore, and to feel. After the ceremony, Lyra returned to the forest, where Ethan and his team waited. She ran to him, laughing freely, her heart light. I did it, she said. They listened, some of them, they are willing to learn. Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. You did it, Lyra. You showed them the power of courage and curiosity. You did not hide, and you inspired change. Lyra looked around at the glowing trees, the floating crystals, the shimmering lakes. The forest had always been beautiful, but now it seemed alive in a way that mirrored her own heart. She had learned to see the world fully, to feel it fully. Over the next days, Lyra worked with both humans and aliens. She shared what she had learned about emotions, curiosity, and connection. She laughed with the young aliens, taught them to explore and experiment, and encouraged them to embrace the joy of discovery. She saw how even small acts of change could ripple outward, inspiring others to think, to question, and to grow. Kale joined her more openly now, practicing small gestures of joy and curiosity. The council watched, sometimes cautiously, sometimes with quiet approval. Slowly, the rigid order of their society began to soften, influenced by one alien girl and the humans who had shown her a different way of being. One evening, Lyra and Ethan sat by the glowing lake, watching the reflections of the stars ripple across the water. I feel different, Lyra said softly. I cannot go back to the way things were. I do not want to. You don't have to, Ethan said gently. Change is hard, but it is what makes life worth living. You have grown, and your people can grow too if they are willing to try. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. I know. One single glance at a human changed everything for me. I never imagined my life could be like this. Ethan smiled. And you've changed more than yourself. You've inspired others. That is the true power of curiosity and courage. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had begun as a curious observer, hidden in the shadows, learning quietly. But now she was a teacher, a leader, a spark of change. Her heart and mind were open, ready for whatever the universe could offer. The forest around them seemed to respond. The glowing trees shimmered brighter, the floating crystals danced lightly in the air, and the water of the lake sparkled with 1,000 colors. It was as if the world itself was celebrating her awakening. In the following weeks, the alien society slowly began to adapt. Rules were softened, curiosity was encouraged, and young aliens experimented with emotions and ideas they had never dared before. The humans continued their studies, sharing knowledge and learning from the aliens. And at the center of this new era stood Lyra, no longer the obedient girl she once was, but a symbol of what could happen when curiosity, courage, and compassion were embraced. Lyra often returned to the forest to watch the humans and her fellow aliens interact. She marveled at how much could change in a short time, how one glance, one connection, one spark of curiosity could ripple outward and transform lives. She laughed freely, cried when moved, and felt every moment deeply. Life was no longer a set of rules. It was a tapestry of experience, learning, and feeling. One day, standing atop the ceremonial platform again, Lyra looked out over the city. She saw young aliens exploring, laughing, and questioning. She saw humans walking beside them, sharing knowledge and joy. She felt the wind on her skin, the light on her face, the warmth of life in her heart. For the first time, she realized that she was truly free. Free to explore, free to feel, free to change the world around her. And she knew that the universe was vast, full of wonders yet to be discovered, and that she would never be the same. Lyra turned to Ethan, who stood beside her, smiling gently. Thank you, she said softly. For what? He asked. For showing me that life could be more than rules, she replied. For showing me that one glance can change everything. Ethan nodded. Sometimes all it takes is one glance or one choice to open a new world. Lyra looked out at the glowing city, the sparkling forests, and the shimmering lakes. She felt alive, fully alive, and she knew that the adventure was only beginning. The humans had come to her world as visitors, but they had left behind something greater than knowledge. They had left hope, curiosity, and courage, the power to change not just one life, but an entire world. And Lyra, the alien girl who had once hidden in the shadows, now stood as proof that even a single glance could ignite a transformation. She smiled, her heart filled with wonder, and stepped forward into the new world she had helped create, knowing she would never be the same again.